Hi, my name is Sham, and I am a feminist coach and process architect. One of the things that I often get asked is, why am I a feminist and what is a feminist? And I often think about how to explain that to people that maybe are not as embedded in feminist theory and even in feminist movements. So maybe the simplest way for me to think about feminism is it's three things, right? So feminism is an ideology, number one, that really helps us to understand our particular experiences of gender inequalities in the world. I think the second thing is it gives us an analytical framework. So this analytical framework is the lens through which we are able to understand, I think, the diversity of different experiences. And then I think the third thing is that feminism to me is also a social change strategy. And I think that is probably how it is that we have formed social movements, particularly feminist movements. And so today, as I talk about what it means to decolonize feminism from an African perspective, I think the first thing for me that's important and why decolonizing feminism is important is to recognize that there are particular histories of African women and people that are gender non-conforming on the continent that are not necessarily always acknowledged. So for me, decolonizing feminism for African feminists is acknowledging those histories of colonialism, of slavery, and the impact it has had on our experiences of our gender, of our sexualities in our lives, even till today. I think the second thing for me that decolonizing feminism means is that it acknowledges that, there are multiple ideological frameworks that form part of feminism. So there isn't just one feminism, right? And so what that means is really getting us to understand, from an African perspective, acknowledging history, but I think it's also acknowledging the diverse ways in which we come to feminism, the diverse experiences we have, and and saying that when we acknowledge that, we understand that even the ways we understand, the ways we express, and the ways we act on our feminism may be different, even if we're living on the same continent. And I think it's important not to universalize feminism for all of us because it's not the same for everybody. The third thing for me that decolonizing feminism does is it emphasizes collectivism. I think on the African continent, I have been fortunate to really be part of different movements, collectives that, we come together in solidarity, where we share our experiences, I guess even the experience of coming together has been a healing experience, acknowledging our diversity. And at times, acknowledging the differences and how that may cause rupture amongst us. So not assuming and romanticizing the idea of collectivism, and even understanding collectivism is complex. And then I think the last part around decolonizing feminism for me is acknowledging the epistemic violence that has come about in the ways I think that others, particularly feminists from the West, have claimed our knowledges or have claimed the right to speak on our behalf, to analyze on our behalf. So really kind of acknowledging that we have wisdom. We also have the ability to make sense of our experiences and to really understand how it is that we want to address that. So maybe to end off this particular clip, I want to talk about one of the initiatives I think that for me, one that I've been involved with is the African Feminist Forum. I know there are many critiques of the African Feminist Forum, but I think that at the time when the African Feminist Forum was set up in 2006, so this next year it will be 20 years, we set up what we called the African Feminist Charter. And I think that was a first attempt to really, to decolonize by really kind of collectively craft what our understanding is of our experience, how we wanted to collectively, even in our diversity, articulate what our feminism is from an African perspective. So it meant that we needed to navigate and negotiate the difference amongst us to say what would be the most common experience. And so thinking about the African Feminist Charter, like it will be 20 years old in 2026, and I think there's going to be a huge celebration of that moment. And I think one of the moments that I remember as a young feminist going into that space was this common refrain that we said, I'm an African feminist, no ifs, no buts. And I think what was the most powerful about that was saying, I'm a feminist, not only if this particular issue is not on the agenda, I'm an African feminist, but, it's saying that as an African feminist, I acknowledge that there are diverse ways of being an African feminist, that there are diverse agendas, and that as long as they are aligned in terms of our collective politics that articulate our collective experience, that we will be in solidarity with those particular agendas. So yeah, in conclusion, I would like to say that maybe the key points around the African Feminist Charter is that it affirms our history as African women in terms of our resistance to patriarchy in Africa. And I think that is important, and that's a response to epistemic violence that has denied or erased our own knowledges. It's also kind of I think it's in opposition to this idea that, as African women, we need saving, right? So it's kind of claiming our agency. It's also, I think the African Feminist Charter is also one that I think it's our first, it's one of the attempts, and I think one of the documents that is still available to newer generations of feminists, that where we have shown what it means to put together an intersectional analysis. I know that for feminists coming into the space right now, there's a lot of critiques of this intersectional analysis, particularly because they feel there are certain things that are not missing, that are not there. But I think it's a good starting point, and I think it was never meant to be a fixed document. It was a document that was meant to be alive, and one that we could use as we continue over generations of our feminist solidarity and organizing. Thank you.